We are recording. 3, 2, 1. You are live.
Hello, 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 Santa Barbara. It's your chantress of everything valuable and beautiful, Elizabeth Stewart. And today I was inspired by a certain group of actors because, you know, this is our show about the artists' impact on the pandemic and the pandemic's impact upon the artist. Personal stories, the quarantine version, came to my attention, and these are really interesting people that we're going to talk to today. And I'm wondering if we can actually start off this hour by asking Terry Ball, who's the executive director of Center Stage Theater, to just give us a little background on personal stories. Terry, please.
Good morning.
Hey.
Personal stories is actually, the premise of personal stories is we put a call out to the community for submissions of short stories, first person short stories that the author is willing to perform. So all of these stories are, well, we do have one that's not a true story, but you know, we've been through rules. It's the pandemic. Rules don't matter anymore. But several years ago, actually, when the series Speaking of Stories was still going on, this was the brainchild of Maggie and I. Thought it would be fun to, a little bit like the Moth series, but to do a series of stories with members of the community. And it's usually a very diverse background. We have some people like Tom Hinshaw, who is with us today, who has a lot of stage experience. But we knew less as an author at that point. And then there are others. One of the people writing in this group is Linda Stewart Oaten, who many people in Santa Barbara will know as a very accomplished author, has spent less time on the stage. So this is usually an eclectic group of both, and then a lot of people somewhere in the middle. And our artistic director, Maggie McSell, who is a fabulous director, calls through and selects the stories. And then we do auditions and find the ones that we think will translate, in most cases, best to the stage. And Maggie works with them. And then we have a wonderful performance that have, the great thing that I have enjoyed, we've been doing these for about 6 years now. And the thing that I love about doing them is every time we've done them, I've learned something new about one of these participants that I've known for years. I say it, everyone, your friends and neighbors have some really incredible stories. And it's amazing to me how you can know somebody for, 10, 15 years in and out and not know really big things about their lives. So that's where personal stories came from.
And then Terry, it's all videoed, right? I mean, the performance is all. Tell us a little how we can see these.
In the quarantine edition, normally their performances at the theater.
Yeah.
And back way in the early 50s in February, we had put out a call and we're going to do an April personal stories. And, then life intervened. And in total honesty, we were at the point in the theater that everything was getting canceled. And I could not cancel one more thing. So I said to all of the participants, and we had not reached the audition stage yet, I said, hang with me. We're going to do this, and we're going to do it one way or the other. I don't know whether we'll be able in the next coming weeks to gather at the theater. I don't know if we'll do this, by Zoom or some sort of video or some hybrid, but we're going to do it. And so it took us a little bit longer than we anticipated. And when we actually started, we thought we were going to have to do it all by Zoom. And happily, we have evolved enough that we are able to open the theater to shoot videos. So for this series, we have broken it down into 5 groups, and we bring them into the theater in socially distanced and sanitized, masked, and everybody leaves on a Lysol high. And we've recorded all of these wonderful stories, and we've put them together into 5 videos. And so if you go to centerstagetheater.org, you can purchase your ticket to the video, and that gets you a link and a password. And that is then good. We're leaving them up through the end of August. So everybody has plenty of time to see them and enjoy them. You can watch them as many times as you want. You cannot download them, and you cannot share them with friends, because the whole adventure is a fundraiser for Center Stage. It is about the only income Center Stage has generated since the middle of March. And so it has been a wonderful fundraiser, but that's how you can get them.
And now, so do you have a professional videographer that's there when the performers are, I guess they're doing soliloquies on stage, right?
Well, they stand at a podium. Their portion of it is identical, really, to the personal stories performances when we do them at the theater. The only difference is there is no audience, and we stop in between each one so that we can sanitize and spray, and they can mask back up, and the next person comes in. But so they come in, we introduce each story on the video with a little slideshow of some candid shots, sometimes related to the story, sometimes just giving you some flavor for the author, and a piece of music that they've selected, and then it transitions into their story, and then we transition into the next one. We have, yes, a professional, in that we're all, we're all working in theater. But we have, when this all first started, and we knew that things were not going to be back to normal for a while, I wrote a grant to the wonderful Santa Barbara Foundation to equip the theater with high quality video equipment, and began watching pathologically all of the various digital theater offerings. So when we got to the point that we were going to do it, I had a feel for what do we want to do and what don't we want to do. So they have great sound. They have wonderful editing. I'm very fortunate in that my wife is a theater designer, and she's a lighting designer, and she is becoming very talented videographer. Happily, she has a film television background. So it's been a collaborative effort, but I think that I'm very, very proud of the final product.
Well, thank you, Terry. And you know what we're going to do? I've asked Terry if she would pull together some performers for us so that we on the radio show can hear a little bit of the personal stories. And you know what, Richard? Mr. Dugan, are you there? So the first story that we're going to hear is from Tom Hinshaw, who's a veteran performer. What is his personal story called? It's called An Irish Pub.
Well, and as it should be, as it should be.
So let's take a quick break. When we get back from the break, Tom Hinshaw is going to give us a little taste of Center Stage's personal stories, the quarantine editions. Don't turn that down.
All right, we are clear. And you should be able to hear me.
So Richard, my dad died of this disease.
Oh.
Oh no.
Yeah.
When did he pass?
It was the end of last week.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but
yeah, it's just amazing because, I'm sort of like kind of in that process of the, grief and all. And I take the dog for a walk. I live on the Upper East, and I see people and they're not wearing their mask and they're doing all kinds of, and it's just like, I want to say this is really not cool. You gotta do this for your other folks in the community. It's pretty astounding.
Well, you'd think we would all have enough of on our plates as it is right now. However, I just got something added to my plate last Friday. Yeah, as if Corona wasn't enough. Yeah, I went in because of, I've been really, really thirsty a lot the last month or so,
Uh-oh.
and so on and so forth. So Friday, running the old blood sugar, and I'm
Oh
now type
no.
2 diabetes. Yep. But
Uh,
it's going to be short-lived. Short-lived. Every human being has the potentiality for type 2. Okay.
Yep.
And so it is possible to put it in remission. Now, my blood sugar was normal up until about a year and a half ago, supposedly, but I haven't had it checked in about a year and a half. And I think it's due more to the pandemic than anything else, because our diet changed. I mean, we started buying comfort foods. We shopped between the ends of the store, where you're supposed to shop only at the ends of the store, as they say. I'm not worried about it. It's actually kind of an interesting process. But hey, every time you turn around, you think, oh, okay, that's off my desk now. And then for some stupid reason, somebody comes along and puts something else on your desk.
So the ends of the store, that's produce and alcohol? Is it?
It's my kind of shopper, Tom.
Yeah, something like that. Produce and alcohol. All right, we are coming back. 3, 2, 1, you're live.
Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart, and I'm talking with the performers, executive director of Center Stage, and we are talking about their video production of something kind of a cross between The Moth and Speaking of Stories. It's called Personal Stories, the Quarantine Edition. And Terry was telling us, Terry Ball, executive director, was telling us that she was so prescient as to start researching videography materials so that Center Stage could actually continue and give the platform to the community to tell personal stories. And our first story, Tom Henshaw is going to tell us a story called The Irish Pub. And Tom, a little bit about him. He's a veteran of both Personal Stories and Speaking of Stories. And then he has been in a lot of productions. Genesis West Theater Company, he appeared in Endgame. He got the Independent Theater Award for that. Title and Deed, also the Independent Theater Award. The Number, Curse of the Starving Class, etc. goes on and on. He's done a lot of work. And so he actually comes from, I believe, do you come from Indianapolis, Tom? Is that
Well,
where you're first?
I grew up in Muncie, Indiana, but I did live in Indianapolis for a while as well.
I see the Evansville repertory on your bio, etc. And I wonder, tell us a little bit of background about the Irish Pub, your story.
This is from a trip I took 20 years ago in Ireland, and came upon this little town by chance, which I'll explain at the beginning of the story, and just had a magical evening of, and this story, the part I'm going to read just sort of sets that up, and you can go to the stories at Center Stage Theater's website and catch the rest of it. But met some great people, and they were just wonderful. And Ireland is what it's advertised to be, a very friendly place.
So start us off.
If you're looking for a good pub in Ireland, watch for the one the town dog chooses. I acquired this wisdom in Ennis-Timon, a small town in County Clare on Ireland's west coast. I discovered Ennis-Timon quite by chance. I had spent the day hiking along the breathtaking cliffs of Moher. As evening approached, it occurred to me that for the first time in my 2-week-long solo wandering of the Emerald Isle, I had neglected to book a room. The closest town is Lahinch, a golf resort on Liscannor Bay that I don't fancy, busy with American golfers. From there, I see brick chimneys jutting through some trees up the hill. There, in Ennis-Timon, I find a suitable inn. With some daylight remaining, I walk up to the little church and cemetery I spotted on the edge of town. On the way there, a wiry little scamp of a dog barks ferociously at me. I tell her she is right to warn her people of such a stranger in their midst. As I walk back, that's perfect. As I walk back down the hill into town, the dog fixes me with a stare. Apparently satisfied that I have not desecrated any graves, she turns and heads down the street. She glances at me over her shoulder and ducks into Carrick's pub. I take this as an invitation. Maybe the dogs of Ireland are as friendly as its people famously are. The few folks in the place are watching television, a show that seems to be a Dutch program called The Music Factory. They are showing American music videos. I recognize only one artist in the USA charts top 10 rundown, Janet Jackson. This is the culture we are exporting, the Music Factory indeed. I can't figure out how to flip through the selection on the CD jukebox. All I can see listed are the Claire Kelts and Neil Diamond. Another dog just walked in here, looked around and left, looking for someone who isn't here, or maybe he heard the music and decided to split. Good decision. The dog I followed in here sits for a while staring at the bartender. Her owner is at the end of the bar reading. The dog doesn't seem to pay much attention to her owner, nor he to her. She leaves, but soon returns. She circles my table and curls up at my feet. Her name is Cassie. Everyone in town knows her, no wonder. I think she knew I was lonely. Occupied as I am with writing in my journal and sipping from my pint, I hadn't noticed that the pub was filling up. I glance up at an older couple looking down at Cassie. They sit at my table. There are still some empty tables. Cassie must have signaled them somehow. They introduce themselves, Dee Dee and Tom, and proceed to order drink after drink and tell me their story.
Fantastic. Well, fantastic. Thank you, Tom. This is kind of, you know, a balm for the ears. It's fantastic to hear. And a window to, you know, places that we can't exactly see right now, but you've opened that window for us. I really was feeling like I was there. Hey, Richard, let's go to quick break. And when we get back, we're going to introduce another of the gang to tell you a little bit more of their personal stories. And we are sitting with Center Stage, especially thankful for Terry Ball, who's the executive director that brought me this show. And don't turn that top. Back in a minute with another personal story.
The dog timing was too fabulous.
It was perfect.
Well-timed sound effects.
It was. That
Perfect.
was hysterical.
So who's next?
I don't know. And we've lost Elizabeth.
We'll find out.
No, Elizabeth is coming back. Elizabeth is coming back.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Cliffs of Moher, and I didn't get there. My wife and I have been there twice back in the early 2000s. But hold on a moment. Oh, okay. We're fine. But we went, took a ferry out to the
Aran Islands?
Air, thank you. And we went to Inishmore.
I did the same thing, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we went out to that prehistoric fort with all those granite stones stacked and everything. Do you remember? I don't know if you got out to that place. I'm sure you did. And there's that giant granite slab that hangs out over the cliff, maybe about 3-4 feet at the most. Well, I wanted to get some photographs, some digital pictures of the ocean. Yeah, I know. Well, my wife was kind of doing the same thing, but I had no fear whatsoever. I got out there. I said, my feet were dangling out over the ocean, okay? And I'm taking pictures. And I had just bought one of those knit hats from one of the tourist shops, and I'd stuffed it in my vest. And as I'm crawling back, it fell out. But it was still on the slab. And when we went to leave the area, she says, "Where's your hat?" I'm going, "Oh no, it blew over the side." Well, it was still there. So I crawled back out, got it, came back. Still, no fear. And then when we get to the gift shop where they have that giant mural of the cliffs from the ocean side, okay, from a helicopter, I started looking at that and I'm going, "Oh, wow, it was up high." Well, the fear still hadn't set in until that night. We were snug and safe in our stone cottage on Inishni. I was scared out of my mind. I don't know why the fear decided to come up then, but it's like, wait a minute, why are you afraid?
It's amazing. There are no railings or anything.
No.
I mean, it's just anybody can walk up to the edge, and people do fall off.
Yeah, that's a long way
That's actually
down.
in my story.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, let me see where we're at here. Okay. Yeah. Oh, fabulous. I mean, we want to move there. I mean, that is my heart's desire to move to Ireland and live there the rest of my days. All right, stand by. We are coming back in 3, 2, 1. You're live.
Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart, and I have the great good fortune of asking Terry Ball to come along and give us a taste of her personal stories. And we've got wonderful actors, part of Center Stage, Personal Stories, Quarantine version. I'd like to introduce our next story. This is Cammie Helmuth. He was Jane in Calamity Jane, Butch in Shooting Stars, and you've seen her all over town. She says she is a professional artist, a part-time writer, creative cook, and mediocre tap dancer. So, Cammie, let's introduce your story called Telling Time.
Yeah, this is about a particularly mortifying time in my life when I was in 3rd grade that really stuck with me. That's about all it is. I was a little kid and this story never left.
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay. I did not know how to tell time. Now, I'm not sure who dropped the ball on this one. Were my parents supposed to teach me this important life skill at some point, but forgot? Or was I absent from school the day they taught time telling? Or was this something I was supposed to self-absorb somehow by now, but wasn't paying attention? So I faked it. I had managed to maintain this appearance of a normal time-telling 3rd grader for over half the school year. Then I was thrown a curveball. On this particular afternoon, my teacher, Miss Connolly, had chosen kickball, one of my all-time least favorite games. We had been playing for what seemed an eternity when my teacher called me over from my useless position in right field. Cammie, can you please run in and check the time for me? I forgot my watch today. Oh my God. What do I do? Panic started to set in as I clumsily speed walked toward the class. Come on, brain, kick in, think of something. I knew going in and actually looking at the clock was useless, so I began frantically scanning the hallway for an adult wearing a watch. But the only person in the entire long hall seemed to be me. I could feel tears starting to form behind my eyes. I picked up speed, moving down the hallway, looking desperately for my savior. I knew I was taking way too long to get back to Miss Connolly and should already be back on the field, but I was actually heading in the wrong direction in hope of finding a teacher or office worker milling about. Just as I felt my luck had run out and was turning around to go back to the kickball field and admit my horrible secret to my teacher, I was nearly run down by the janitor, who was rounding the corner with his mop and sloshing rolling bucket. "Excuse me," I practically yelled at him, "but can you please tell me what time it is?" To my horror, he pointed wordlessly at the giant clock above the principal's office door behind me and continued on his mission. I knew this was my only chance and somehow mustered up the courage to blurt out, "I can't tell time, please help me." I was relieved to see the janitor stop, turn slowly around and walk toward me. "It's 1:20, dear," he said, then discreetly whispering, "You should know how to read a clock by your age. Ask your parents to teach you." He turned back to his mop and bucket and sloshed down the hall. Okay. I had my answer. I now just needed to get back to Miss Connolly as fast as possible so she might not know what I had had to go through to get it. I knew she would already be wondering what happened to me. I broke into an erratic run toward the field, my arms flailing and legs practically kicking my rear end. As I got closer, my hopes were dashed. The field was empty. No kids, no teacher, no kickball. My heart sank.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Hey, Richard, should we go to quick break and then introduce the next story?
Sure.
All right. Don't turn that dial. Back in a minute. Thanks, Cammie.
Sure.
All right.
Well done, Cammie.
Oh, thank you.
We're clear.
So, Gary, can we have you next?
Yeah.
Nice clap there, Tanya.
Thank you. I'm quite the Zoom ninja at this point.
God, I know.
Okay.
a skill we all have developed way more than any of us wanted to.
Yep.
Well, I will tell you that I am involved, interestingly enough, in a Zoom theater that has actually turned out to be kind of fun. I'm not an actor in it, but I am, I guess you would call me the videographer. And Ed Geron, who is one of our program hosts on Mondays, is also an actor. And he gets these plays, he writes them or has them at hand. And we do a Zoom rehearsal a couple of times, and we record those as well. Then we record the video. We record the video on Zoom. Then I go ahead and put it into my editor and put in the opens and closes and try to get the credits and all that kind of stuff as much as possible. And then we have a performance, kind of like what you're talking about. It's kind of fun to do.
So, Richard, I think Maggie must be in the waiting room because she was going to join us around 10:30.
All right,
So
let me see. Somebody just. Okay, yeah, I've got. There's Maggie. All right, there's Maggie coming in. And there she is.
Hi,
There.
oh,
Maggie.
Maggie.
Hey, Maggie.
There we go.
There you are. Hello.
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 You're on a break, Maggie.
We're on a break?
Yes.
We are.
Well, let there go of my friendly people there. Look at
You missed two great stories.
You did.
Yes, you did.
You
Let's
did.
try for, maybe I've heard them before, do you think?
See.
Tom and Cammie have charmed us so far.
Alright.
So, Terry, a question. I'm looking at your wall and all the clocks are different times. Speaking of telling time.
Yes. Well, my wife and I, if you say that there's a decorative style to our house, it would be whimsy. There is no, and we have an odd collection of clocks.
Very cool.
And
Let's find out if Cammie can tell us what time each one of them.
Well, she'll have to.
I'm going to fake it. It's sometime between 10 and 11.
there you go.
Time to start. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. You're live.
Welcome back. Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart, and we're talking with Center Stage, our executive director, Terry Ball, and Maggie Mixell, who's actually the director there, just joined our Zoom here. And we're talking with 4 actors about their personal stories that they've brought to the theater. And welcome to Maggie. I think Maggie's going to close our show by telling us a little more how to get a hold of the personal stories. But I want to introduce Gary James, who's next up to tell us his personal story. And he's really an interesting guy. He's written a children's book with the original song called A Lofty Tale. And if your kids want something to read, it's available on Amazon. So Gary, your story is called Screenplay. Let's hear it.
What tales of long ago that fireplace screen might have told? A yard sale find. My first apartment with a fireplace, and now a fireplace screen. An ornamental standing screen meant to be set aside while burning a fire, and only $15. Vintage early 1900s, curvilinear in shape, brown leatherette with 2 wooden cross pieces on the bottom to keep it upright. On its surface, an oil painting, a yellow tropical bird with a dramatic long tail, perched on a branch and surrounded by lush foliage. It colorfully accented my living room for several years. Along the way, I acquired a puppy, a pug, Milo. From the get-go, he tormented me by lifting his leg and relieving himself on that screen. No behavior modification worked. Eventually, I was exasperated. So I sold it at my own yard sale for 20 bucks. Good riddance. Time passed. I had become a professional installer of wall coverings, a paper hanger. One client, a cheerful matron, had a home filled with French antiques, the real McCoy. Returning frequently over 2 or 3 years, I moved from room to room, installing exotic silks and designer handprints. On one occasion, about to leave after measuring and presenting my quote for yet one more room, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. The yellow tropical bird with a long tail in front of her fireplace. I gasped. I know that screen. I used to own it. How fun, she replied. I got it from a local dealer for $125. I suggested that we could prove that it had once been mine by a scorch mark on the reverse side, the result of my putting it back prematurely in front of a dwindling fire. We looked, and there it was, a palm-sized scorch mark. Ha! What were the chances? Being a lifelong artist, she mentioned that she had touched up the artwork, plus given the whole screen a coat of shellac. She refinished the wooden feet and added brass upholstery tacks around the outer edge for effect. A classy restoration indeed. I bid a last farewell to the yellow tropical bird with the long tail. Or so I thought.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Richard, do we have time to go to break, or should we do another story? How does our time look?
Well, what I can tell you is that between now and the end of the hour, we only have one more break. So I leave that up to you.
Okay, well, we'll just leap in because Tanya Israel is up next. And Tanya is a storyteller, a lyricist, an activist, a professor, an author, and playwright. And she performs as herself typically. Conversations with Contraception is one play. For Agnes, speaking of stories, Breakfast with Smartasses, etc. Her first book actually is going to be released this coming month, August. Beyond Your Bubble, How to Connect Across the Political Divide. Wow. Skills and strategies for conversations that work. More information on that book, TanyaIsrael.com. And Tanya, I'm going to introduce your story, Irrational Fear of Spoilers. Tell me, how'd you think of that?
Well, Terry was talking about how sometimes she'll learn new things about people from hearing these stories. And so my mother lives in Santa Barbara, and every time she comes to Speaking of Stories, she says, wow, I learned something new about you. So there's always new things to learn. And then this story actually features my mother. So I have to credit my muse. I feel like she sort of is incubating things, and then as soon as a call for personal story submissions comes out, then it just pours out. So that's sort of how it came to be.
What's your mom's name?
Mary.
Okay, Mary, this is for you. Okay, Tanya, you're up.
I have an irrational fear of spoilers. This is immediately apparent to anyone who mentions a movie or TV show in my presence. I urgently interrupt. Don't tell me what happens. A reflexive attempt to shield myself from information I do not want to hear. My friend Heather says, I know, Tanya, trust me, I'm not going to give anything away. As if I'm just being paranoid. But even after I ask people not to tell me, they say things like, oh, it's okay, I'm not that far into the series. I'm just up to a few episodes after Michael dies. I didn't know Michael dies. People tell me things that happen, followed by a justification that they didn't tell me anything significant. But they have no idea. I love watching a story unfold. I love an unexpected turn, an ending I didn't foresee. I don't want to think about the movie. I want to experience it. But when I'm aware of what's coming, it's on my mind and I'm not fully present. This makes it difficult for me to read movie reviews, as they almost invariably divulge more about the plot than I want to know. So, after my mother moved to Santa Barbara, it became her job to select movies for us to see together. And this worked very well. My mother picked good movies. She took up the task with the dedication of a primary investigator on a research project, combing reviews in the multiple newspapers she read daily. And I was happy for her to do it. Although, there was the one time I regressed to, I can do it myself, petulant 5-year-old mode, and insisted on picking the movie. I ended up hating Gone Girl all the more because I was sitting next to my mom, who I know would have made a better choice. After that, I always deferred to her. My mom didn't mind if the reviews revealed key plot points. She thrived on information. One of the last movies we saw together was The Wife. I know this for sure because I can't bear to delete the voicemail where she announced the movie selection, where her voice is clear and upbeat, each word enunciated with precision. Hi, Tanya. I've looked over the movies that we'll be showing, and I'd still put The Wife as my first choice.
Now, I want to know, Tanya, you were not looking at notes at all. Did you have this by memory, or you were looking straight into, oh, by the way, we're videoing this because Richard is so kind to do, but I can see you and you're not reading from a script.
The marvelous thing about Zoom, if you know, we've all got to know Zoom very well, is that I can actually put the script right up on my screen, so I can read right from the screen and maintain eye contact.
Impressive.
So you don't want to know that the Titanic went down in the movie The Titanic from 19.
Don't tell me what happened.
Yeah.
You're a jerk, Richard.
Hey, spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
Yeah, so I want to just come back a little bit to speaking with Maggie McSell, the director, and just a little introduction. Maggie teaches performance and directing classes at Santa Barbara City College. For 17 years, she's artistic director of Education Speaking of Stories. She taught in the BFA acting program in the orientation division at UCSB. She's also done a lot of theater work that you might have heard of through UCSB, SBCC, etc. But before concentrating on directing, Maggie worked as a lighting designer. And then she also worked with the Santa Barbara Shakespeare Festival. She's teaching 2 performance classes through Santa Barbara City College Adult Education. Are you still doing that, Maggie?
Still doing what?
Yeah, it says on your bio you'll be teaching 2 performance classes through Santa Barbara City College Adult Education.
Yes, in fact, this is the first time that they're being offered is this fall.
And it's all going to be Zoom?
I guess.
Depends on what day you ask.
Don't count on anything around here, because that's what we're planning today. It will be on Zoom.
Yeah, that's right. We never know. So when Terry was introducing, before you came on the program, Terry was introducing how you kind of select the stories, and you select, and then what I want to hear about is the point in which you've selected the stories, and then do you coach or direct the performer at all?
Yes, totally.
Totally. Tell me a process. So, for example, we just heard from Tanya. How did you direct her?
Well, she's done this a lot of times, so she does need much directing, but it's mainly about the rhythm and the pacing of the piece, knowing when to take a hesitation or a break or a pause, knowing when to speed up, when to slow down, what to emphasize to get the theme of your story across. And as with all of these people, they've done it several times. Each one of the readers that you've heard today have been involved in personal stories more than once, and they're all so they're old hands at it. And so when they come in, I don't have to do much, but sometimes you get some very dedicated and wonderful writers who have never been in front of an audience before, and you can take those wonderful words and coach them into being able to tell their story to enhance the meaning and get the point across to an audience.
So I have a question for you. You've directed for many, many years and taught for many years. And my partner and I were talking about the difference between, and he was in his past an athlete, a very good athlete, and he was talking about the difference between a theatrical group and a team, an athletic team. And I said, well, it's all, and my background was ballet for years and years. So I was, till I was in my 30s, I worked for professional ballet companies throughout the country. And I said, it's sort of the same, I think, although I was never the kind of athlete, if you can say a dancer's an athlete, maybe. But he said, there's the selfless part. And when you're a performer, there's the ego part. And so the ego's on stage. And when you're in a team, you can't have an ego, because then you miss the shot or whatever. And I said, well, it's really interesting to be involved in a performance on stage, because what happens is there's that moment where throughout rehearsal, it looks like it's going to be utter chaos, complete and utter chaos. And then the curtain goes up and there's a miracle that happens, that everybody does what they're supposed to do in the right time. Not always, but 90% of the time that miracle happens. And I guess my question is, since this is personal stories that you're directing, is a Zoom enterprise, and the performance is a Zoom enterprise. And I know that you've got your individuals that are speaking on the podium at center stage, but do you still have that golden moment where everything comes together and you just know it's going to work?
Absolutely, and I trust it. It happens. I taught a class at UCSB that was involved through student health with kids who had never acted before in their life, and the supervisors would come who all were concerned with the health issues, not the performance issues. And they would all just bite their teeth and their nails. And I said, the train will come into the station. It doesn't come in until the last minute, but it does come in. And finally, they could relax and believe me, because it does. There's that magic moment when it does come together, but it takes a process to get there.
Terry, while I was describing this contrast between the athlete and in my case, the dancer in a company, you were nodding your head. Tell me.
Well, see, I think they're very, very similar. Being a sports nutter, I'm a klutz, so I was not a sports participant, but both of my sons were. And I grew up the daughter of a coach. And I was for a very long time a stage manager. I personally think it's very much a similar process. I think in both cases, you have to have a little bit of ego to be a successful athlete and or a successful performer, because you're going to put yourself out there, and there's going to be that moment when you are all by yourself, and you have to have that confidence. But I think they both also are all about teamwork. I think that's one of the things that most people that perform love the most, is those moments of it all coming together. And we were very excited with this, that though we started Zoom and all the rehearsals started Zoom, that though we didn't have the audience, they did get to come together in the theater for that final performance. And they coach each other. Maggie directs them all, but they also give each other notes, both as performers and writers. It's a really interesting process to watch. But I as a longtime lover of both performance and athletics, I think there's way more similarities in the two than there are differences.
And Richard, you were giving me a signal. Is it that we have to go to another break, or?
In about a minute, I want to dovetail off of what she just said in terms of what I've observed in both athletics and in the theater, especially in interviews that have been given by the athletes as well as the actors, and how, well, what was it like working with Marlon Brando or working with this great actor or that great actor? And many, many times, the newer or intermediate actor who's starting to really make a name for themselves says, oh, you're not going to believe it. I mean, I had never met him before. I was in awe of him or her. And they just said, hey, you know that last scene we did? We're going to do it again. Only here's what I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you this information. Da, 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 da. The same kind of thing comes from those intermediate athletes who say that, oh yeah, that guy, like in golf, Tom Watson, he came up to me and he said, blah, da, 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 da. And it made my game so much better. And what it made me think of is that these upper echelon actors and athletes, they want to play with people who are at their best. So they're going to help them to get to their best level. They don't want to play with mediocre players. You know, where's the victory in that? You know?
So we had Richard, I think, kind of definitely referring to a couple of interviews we had. We got really lucky when we started our program about the actors' or the artist's impact upon the pandemic. I had this sort of interesting thought that I wanted to interview somebody who specializes in auditions, because I thought when we re-enter the stage of this world, we're going to sort of be like, I remember having the audition fright, and it can either be a terrific launch pad, that fright, or it can bring you down. And so we found a gentleman based in Brooklyn who has been teaching audition psychology for years and years to talk to us about how we re-entered the world stage and what is interesting about the audition process. And he said, you know, that in his career, and he's been in numerous movies, et cetera, seasoned actor, et cetera. And he said in his career, he's worked with some of the greats. And the interesting thing about the greats is that they are so humble and they're not egomaniacs. And that's how you know they're great.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting comment. And then we also interviewed a gentleman who runs the Actors Lab. And he's got labs all over the country where he teaches young performers. And he said the same thing. He said, you know, it's a collaborative process. And if you are a diva, you don't get hired again. So basically, we try to stay away from that diva-dom. And Richard, do we have to do something here? We go to quick break?
One quick break, last one.
Okay. When we come back, I want Maggie to tell us how we can best see these stories and what the kind of format is in which they are presented to us, which is all on, I think, YouTube, right, Maggie?
No.
Oh, no.
No, it is not. Okay. Well, when we get back from the break, we're going to say it's not on YouTube and how we're going to actually access the personal stories. Don't turn that down. Back in a minute with the four wonderful actors and a beautiful executive director and a wonderful director of personal stories, the Quarantine Edition.
We're clear.
So Maggie, it seems important to mention that you limit our stories to 10 minutes, not to exceed 10 minutes when read, because that hasn't been mentioned yet.
Okay. I can do that.
Maggie, what's the painting in back of you with the sunflowers?
I have a good friend who lives up in Sebastopol, and she is an artist, and she painted that painting. There's a long story behind it, but I'll show you one other that of hers that I like, because I like her work, and she's a friend, so I get discounts. But this is the bad girl, because I just feel like it speaks to me, because I tend to be a bad girl. So.
That's fantastic.
But Tammy is a wonderful painter, and she does commissions. And I had her do a painting of my dog, and I just love it. And she just excels. She's a beautiful painter, and she's recently found these. I guess they're palm something or others on the beach. Yeah. And she made these just wonderful, almost mask-like creatures out of them. Very talented artist, that Tammy.
Thank you.
Writer and actor.
Thank you. Gosh.
And she can dance too, I'm sure.
No.
No, we've had you on center stage.
You have. That's true.
No, they're lovely.
Sing. Maybe she can sing. I don't know.
No.
It's
I
interesting.
make up for my lack of talent with a lot of enthusiasm in dancing. That's all I have.
We have we've interviewed a number of painters, and Arturo Teo was on the program. Arturo, who's just such a beautiful man, and he was saying, it was a panel discussion with 4 other painters, and he was saying that he finds it difficult to paint, and even though he paints plein air and he walks out on the bluffs and tries to do his plein air work, he finds that he has just too much, I don't know, too much something, too much emotion. And so what he's been doing lately is learning to cook.
Good.
So, so some, and another artist that we interviewed said, I really love this time because I get to just do my mosaics. Nobody bothers me. My phone doesn't ring.
Everything about it.
Here we go.
has a
In 3,
feeling.
2, 1.
Everything that
You're live.
Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart, and I'm speaking with 4 wonderful actors that have participated in Personal Stories, the quarantine version at Center Stage Theater. And I'm hearing from Maggie Mixell, the director of this beautiful, beautiful ensemble. Maggie, tell us about how people can listen to the stories.
You can go on the Center Stage website where you will find links, and there are 5 different groups. We made smaller groups for a variety of reasons, and all 5 are wonderful. And I can't remember what groups our current actors that are on the show are in, but you can get a discount if you do all 5. And it's all the information is available on the Center Stage website. And I'm hoping that you will listen to all 5 groups because they're all different in tone, and they're good stories and good readers.
What is that website?
Center Stage. And Terry wanted me to mention that when the call goes out for submission of stories, we ask for stories to be no longer than 10 minutes. Again,
so let's say a listener is interested in presenting a story. How do they go about doing that?
Again, Terry puts out a call for submission through the email that she generates from Center Stage and from Speaking of Stories when it was intact. And the call goes out, but it's always on the Center Stage website. So if people get used to going onto that website, the minute there's a call for submissions, it will be on that website. So just get in the habit of checking it weekly.
And on the website, you can sign up to be on our email list. And that's the first place we promote it. We send out a blast. And we will definitely be doing more. I've already had a couple of people ask. Because as long as we're shut down and we can't have audiences in, we're going to continue to produce videos and content like this. Personal stories, we're going to do some play readings, we're going to do some dance. So
we go on to Center Stage, we sign up for the email, and if we're interested in submitting a story, does it have to be a draft of the story, Terry?
No, you're going to have a fairly final, and there are specifications. As Maggie said, they need to be less than 10 minutes, and in pretty final form. Maggie will do some editing with them in the final process. The stories almost always change through the process, but yeah, you want a fairly finished story.
And how many submissions do you generally have?
We usually get somewhere between 100 or more.
Wow. Well, thank you guys. Thank you. Center Stage is the place to be if you want to take a listen to this 5 group of wonderful story. And thank you so much for being with me today, all of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, you're clear. I do have another show coming up at 11 o'clock.
Me too.
Bye,
Bye.
Everyone.
Thank you.